everybody. Welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am one of your hosts, Derek, and that is Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, what's up?
Hi, was that finger guns? You giving me
Not
finger
quite.
guns?
I didn't have any handles on them, just points.
Just pointing. Okay.
Yeah, so just all barrel.
All, all barrel. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it. Well, we're the Coming of Cage podcast. We are your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. And this week, we are reviewing Nicolas Cage's only directorial credit, which is 2002's Sonny, which actually stars James Franco and Mena Suvari. Nick is in it, however, briefly as a character named Acid Yellow,
Which we will talk about.
which we will talk about. And this movie, I'm just going to do the synopsis real quick. An honorable discharged soldier returns home to New Orleans, hoping to break away from his upbringing as a trained prostitute, but his brothel madam mother has other expectations. So there you go.
It's somewhat accurate.
Yeah. At this point, James Franco, Spider-Man came out the same year as this movie. So people didn't really know him all that well yet. He had been in Freaks and Geeks. And Mena, she had already been in American Beauty and 2 American Pie movies. So people probably knew her the most from at least the 2 of them. But yeah, that's the movie, man. So
Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to take us through what we do here?
Yeah, so normally what we do here is that I try and take notes about the movie of things that are interesting or noteworthy, and usually miss other things while I'm taking notes, but Derek fills in those gaps for me. But yeah, we just kind of go in like the chronological order of the way things happen in the movie, not necessarily the chronological order of, the actual movie, because sometimes things jump back and forth. So,
Whoa.
Yeah, I just blew everybody's mind. I know. But yeah, that's how we usually do it. Yeah. So, funny story.
Ooh.
I have 3 crossed out notes at the beginning of this because sometimes sometimes these movies aren't readily available, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to use other means to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a movie named Sonny.
Oh no.
That said it was from 2002, spelled the same and everything. And my girlfriend and I start watching it, and it's about like it starts out in India, and it's a like cop woman that is apparently undercover and starts like fighting this guy that's sexually harassing her. And we got through about 15 minutes of this, and I was like, this seems really different than the synopsis I read. Should we like look and see maybe what's happening? Like, are we watching the right movie? And so turns out we were watching a movie called Sonny, Soni. It came out in 2018 and was a Netflix production. But for some reason it was mislabeled.
It happens.
Yeah, now in my Nic Cage folder on my media drive, there's a movie that says Sonny that is not Sonny. Well, it's Sonny. It's just a different Sonny. It's not always Sonny in this case.
It's not always.
So yes, I have 3 notes that are completely worthless now. So we're gonna ignore those notes as much as I want to go through them.
That's fair. The most annoying part for me when we do these types of movies is if you look them up, they'll say that they're streaming on Amazon Prime, and they really mean Freevee.
Right, and we have a irrational hatred towards Freevee because in the most like dramatic moments of the movie, you get a Pepsi commercial or something, and it's just horrible. But that is how I ended up watching this as well. So,
yeah,
what are you gonna do? And I mean, at this point, I feel like Freevee and Tubi might as well just be renamed the Nic Cage, like B movie channels, like all the obscure movies that you never want to watch that Nic Cage has done.
Really, anything he did with Saturn Media is going to be
right. Which is like 40 movies.
He's loyal.
So a movie opens up, and in the subtitles it said "sensitive piano music," which I thought was an interesting way to start the movie. And so then we get what is supposed to be James Franco walking through the streets of New Orleans in a like military outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just really bad green screen.
Which gets more confusing later when like he's
He's actually
clearly
there.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this must have been like maybe like
a
a reshoot
reshoot.
or something.
Yeah, it's like a chest up shot of
Mm-hmm.
him, like right in front of his face, with New Orleans behind him.
If you
And
go to
yeah,
the IMDb page where the trailer plays, the thumbnail is the shot we're talking about.
yeah,
If you, you
it
know,
is several shots, like different locations, but it's
mm-hmm.
just very weird that they
Yeah.
would choose to do it that way when they had access to New Orleans. But whatever. Yeah, that was unfortunately it wasn't bad green screen driving, so we didn't get to check that box on the thing.
Wah, wah.
I also find it interesting that this is not really important to any point of the movie, but in the description of the movie, it says an honorably discharged soldier, but they never say anything about his discharge in the movie or whether it was honorable or dishonorable, and it never plays a point at all.
So, if anything, I would argue that saying that he's honorably discharged actually confuses the movie more. And I don't want to jump ahead too much, but that there's an option then he would have had if he was honorably discharged that is never discussed throughout the movie. If he had been dishonorably discharged, then that option would not have been available. So I want to talk about that later
Okay.
when we
Yeah,
get to
but I
that.
just thought that was interesting because
Yeah.
we get home and he does have all his military gear and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
they never touch base on his discharge. So I don't know why that was so important that they had to put it in the synopsis. But anyway,
I think maybe it's meant to paint the picture that this guy doesn't want to be in this life anymore, right? He's supposed to have gone straight, right? He's cleaned up his act. He's reading books now and all this type of stuff, right? So he was honorably discharged, which meant that, he followed all the rules, did what he was supposed to do. He wasn't a troublemaker, those types of things.
I do probably at this point want to say that maybe a trigger warning.
Hmm.
There is some pretty dark subject matter here. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
handled in a way that it was handled in a lighter way. But when you think about the actual subject matter, it's fairly dark and it involves, sexual things with underage people, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, then definitely you might want to peace out on this episode, sadly, and maybe go listen to our Teen Titans Go one.
Yeah, and if you were thinking of watching this movie, there's also some violence that's kind of intense a couple of
Yes.
times as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So getting into that, we see him go into this house in New Orleans, presumably his old house that he lived in before he went on to the military, and he talks to his mother, and we find out that his mother is a madam,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you don't know, is a person that runs a brothel generally, and that she mentions that she trained him herself,
Yeah, man.
which is right out of the gate. This is in the first like 3 minutes of the movie.
I, I want to believe the intention was that like she had like the women that worked for her train him, and she didn't directly do it because that's bad enough,
Yeah.
right? But man,
But she says it many times that she trained him. So
it is immediately uncomfortable in this movie.
and the reason why I don't think that that's the case is because later, or not that much later in the movie, but really like in the scene, she talks about this other girl that she has and that he could train her.
Yeah.
So I feel like if she was saying that, or like taking credit for other people doing training, then she would have just said, I'm going to train her with you or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's a
I don't know.
possibility. Yeah,
It's dark subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And later we find out that it was 12. He was 12 years old, which is what makes this pretty dark.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. In general, incest.
Well, he started physically doing it at 12. Younger than that, he was still around
training
it in the house, and so yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. So then he's having this conversation with his mom. She's bringing up that she can't wait to get him back into work. And she's got people that have been asking for him. He's apparently godlike in terms of his sexual prowess because women are literally drooling over him throughout the movie. And she said, she's talking about how she can't wait for all this, blah, blah, blah. She's got people lined up ready to go. And he says that he doesn't want to be in this life anymore. And his mom just goes ballistic and starts trying to guilt trip him into into doing this, and how she gave up her whole life, and that he's the only thing she has to show for her life and everything. So
She's
yeah,
clearly not well off.
no, and she clearly has a lot tied up into him. Um, I don't know remember why I think we go into his old room, and for some reason he's like looking in the mirror, and it like the camera shows a first place spelling bee trophy.
Yeah, so
Like it focuses on that. It's not just like a set decoration.
I think again that was another example of the movie trying to show us that this kid, like, he was excelling at school. He was a smart kid, like, who participated, right, and wasn't like slacking off. I think because I think there's a misconception that people who end up in this life are there for specific reasons, right? And maybe that's not the case, is maybe the part of the point the movie is trying to make.
Maybe it was just a weird decision to use a spelling bee to like show that. So we, at this point, I think in this scene we meet Mena Suvari, who is her newest worker.
Carol is the character's name.
Carol. And there's a weird introduction. Carol is staying in his old room, and she says she offers to leave, and let him have the room, and he says no, it's fine. So they're sharing a bed together already. And I don't think they actually have sex at this point. I think it's like a day or two later.
It's unclear. I feel like it's a day or two later as well, but time moves very strangely in this movie. It's very hard to kind of tell when a day is over.
So next we get the pretty, not super graphic, but more graphic than was like really necessary, blowjob scene of Carol blowing this car dealership owner to get use of a Trans Am. This takes place in 81, by the way, if we didn't mention that. It's a period piece. And so this is like a brand new Firebird, Pontiac, and she's blowing the guy, and she's trying to discuss like how long she needs the car for and stuff while she's doing the job, and he tells her, just finish and then we'll figure out the details. And it's a really kind of grotesque scene. But it turns out that she was getting the car for Sonny, who's James Franco's character, to use while he's in town. I assume she's presuming that he's going to be there for a while. And
she very quickly goes very far out of her way to like help him out immediately.
I'm sure I took it as she was just kind of like directed to do that by his mom, to make him feel at home.
Maybe. And, I guess as the movie progresses, I didn't feel that way. I felt like that was of her own doing, but maybe
it might have been. I mean, going out and randomly blowing a guy for a car to give a car to a guy that you just met a day ago seems like a pretty big jump without having something else push you. But I mean, who knows? Well,
one of the key aspects of her character, right, is that she really does intend to get out of that life. And maybe she knew immediately that he was a good possible way out.
Maybe.
I don't know.
He at this point, he told his mom he wanted to get out. He's not back in. He said that when he was in the service that there was another guy that he was stationed with that his dad had a bookstore in Texas. I think it was Texas City or
Texas
something.
Texas City, Texas. Yeah.
And that he was going to go there and take that job. And that was his plan. And the next scene we get James Franco butt, which there's several of in this movie. So it's not as really exciting as a Nic Cage butt, if I'm being honest, but it is there.
It is there.
He's shaving, which there's several scenes of him shaving, and it's very odd that I feel like there might have been some intended symbolism or something with the shaving, but it didn't really come through for me. But there's at least 3 scenes of him shaving in this movie. And then this first one, Um, at this point, a random guy walks into the bathroom that we don't have any clue who this guy is. He's butt naked shaving, and this guy walks in, just like starts having a friendly conversation with him. Clearly, he knows this gentleman. Turns out it's somebody that is a partner for his mother. Mm-hmm. He's also a gambling addict, potentially alcoholic.
He's a thief. He steals
he's a thief.
Things.
Yeah, he has a lot of issues. Yeah, and so he goes in and says hi, so, you know, like come down for breakfast or something along those lines. And Carol is still sleeping in the bed, and when he walks by, this old guy, he like grabs her upper thigh, like crotch area,
mm-hmm.
to wake her up. And when she wakes up, she says, "I told you to stop doing that." Mm-hmm. And so that's, you know, pretty problematic. I mean, prostitute or not, nobody needs to be treated that way. You know, so that's a weird. It was a different world in '81, but you know, this is a more modern movie, so having things like that is still questionable in my mind. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to remember if anything important happens at that breakfast or whatever. I don't think they even show much of that breakfast. There is a breakfast later, but
one of the things I started noticing at this point, because Nic directed this one, I did try and pay a little extra attention.
Me too, yeah.
The way the movie was shot and things like that that I don't normally do, because we're more trying to focus on Nic's performance. And I noticed that Nic really loved the close-up shot.
Yes, in character moments specifically. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're talking about? Yes, I noticed that too. I have a note about that later, but he really likes the framing. He mm-hmm. likes specific framing of intimate character moments, which I think you would probably agree is pretty fitting for what we've seen of his performances. He seems to just relish in those intimate, like very emotion driven moments, and there are a lot in this movie that are probably unnecessary. They're good for character development, I suppose, but they don't necessarily lead anywhere, a lot of them. Well, but you can tell the way they're framed. Yes, he definitely has a very specific vision for the way he wanted these moments to look.
Well, it seems like he had a pattern to the way he would do things, where he would have like an establishing shot of the set, right, of whatever the room was, the place was. So that way the audience is like, okay, so we're in the kitchen, whatever, right? And then it would basically be all of these close-up shots from that point forward. Not always on the face. Sometimes they'd be close up on like the hands or something like that, like during the card games later or something.
Sure.
But it was all very much like far back establishing shot and then close-up shots.
And it's not always like center frame either. So a lot of times he would show like the background or something like important off to the side. So yeah, you could definitely tell that his focus, just like when he acts himself in a movie, was the important intimate moments. That's where he really like wants to be in the movie. Yeah. You know, I'm sure he enjoys the action scenes and stuff like that, but really that's where he likes to have moments with other actors, it seems like. Mm-hmm. So, and he liked to focus on those in this movie as well as a director. This day, Sonny I assume it's this day. Like you said, time is kind of ambiguous in this movie, but I assume it's the same day. Sonny goes to a suit store. I don't know if it's in like a mall or what, to get a new suit. And two ladies show up in that suit store. So my next note is super horny old lady at suit store, because I mean, this lady has had her mind blown by him several times, I imagine, in the past. And she so much loved it so that she had told this other lady about it before they even knew they were going to run into him. Mm-hmm. This was just her like recounting stories of past flings. So this other lady, you know, at some point during this conversation, she's very horny towards Sonny and asks if he's working again, and you know, just like trying to figure out if he's available to book and things like that. And the other lady doesn't really know who this is or what's going on until the one lady says, "Oh, this is the guy I told you about." Mm-hmm. And then she instantly has a waterfall between her legs too, and it's just like, I got to get me some of this guy, right? Was she not? Were they not? Like, it was like a switch turned on.
They were very interested.
Yes, she went from just being friendly to being like, I need more information about you right now, and I want you to come to this party I'm having and stuff like that.
Yeah, this so the scene is kind of serving two key purposes that are really important for the rest of the movie. One is these ladies, right? And the type of work that he gets, right? Because at this point, we know that he's very popular or very good at what he does, but we haven't really seen the clientele because he's saying that he's not doing it. So this is our first glimpse at what that looks like. The other piece is that while he's getting these new clothes, he's also trying to get a job there.
Right.
And he gets turned down after the guy overhears this conversation. So there's clearly a stigma, right? And once, people know you for this, then perhaps you're not welcome in certain areas, right? And so those two things are very key for the rest of the story.
For sure. And you kind of get a hint at this point that maybe he's not so confident that this bookstore thing is going to work out. He hasn't been down there yet, but he's already asking about other jobs in this area. So you get kind of like that first bit of, well, maybe he isn't so confident in that. So I don't usually like to comment on the looks of actors in movies because they can't control that. But I have to say that James Franco was a little distracting in this, because he always looked like he was falling asleep. And I know that he just has eyes that don't open very much. But in this movie, it was like, in Spider-Man, it wasn't really a big deal. I never really had that vibe. In Pineapple Express, he was supposed to be like a stoner, and stoners kind of have that thing where they're always tired or whatever, and their eyes are always half closed because they're relaxed. I don't know, right? That's a thing. And yes, half baked, they have their eyes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But in this movie, he looks like he's asleep or about to be asleep constantly. And for me, it was a little bit distracting. Like I said, I know that's just the way that he looks, I guess, but he hasn't been like that in other movies that I've seen that came out in similar time frames. So I don't know.
I think he just pushed it a little too hard on I'm going to be the suave, sad boy.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Right. And that was just the look that came together for it. Because I agree with you. He kind of has this look throughout almost the entire movie. And I don't know. It didn't fit what he's saying a lot of the time.
Right.
And so it did feel kind of disjointed, and I don't know where the fault lies for that. Right. But it was weird.
It was. And, for us being Nic Cage fans, part of his acting, he's very big on eyes. Like, he uses his eyes to emote a lot. Right.
Yes.
And so going from that, which is what we're usually reviewing, to this was a stark difference.
Yeah.
So yeah. And my next note is casual smoking and tidy whities. There's a lot of casual smoking in this movie. It takes place in 81. I understand the world was different.
Maybe we need to add that to the bingo card.
Casual smoking.
Jesus.
I mean, there's a lot in his movies too. That would be another good square to have mixed in occasionally. Yeah. But yeah, here's a scene of him just smoking away in tidy whities. Like I said, lots of smoking throughout this movie.
He's also like half dressed a lot of the time, at least early on in the movie. There's several shots where I'm like, is he wearing pants? And it takes 20 seconds to find out if he's wearing pants.
Right, and it's not really that important to the scene, but you just kind of want to know if he's walking around naked or if he actually has pants on.
Exactly.
Yeah. My next note is that Henry, who is the partner of his mother, Henry is a good guy, even though he's got this stuff going on. He's kind of, in this movie, he's kind of the wholesome character. Even though he's a thief, at least that's the way it came across to me. He was a thief and, all these other things, but he really did care about his mom, and he really did care about Sonny. And, he gave Sonny good advice, wanted him to get out of the life. His life had been gone. His life had been, wasted, he felt like, and he saw an opportunity to help Sonny not have that feeling. And so he was kind of, for me, the moral compass of the movie, even though he was himself a bad person. But nobody's perfect, really. I mean,
no, I think that's fair. I think so. First off, the kitchen scene is very powerful. The scene where the two of them are talking about Sonny wanting to go take this job and everything like that. And Harry,
and that is where I wrote this note. This was the kitchen scene, I think. So
Henry is played by Harry Dean Stanton. I'm sure you know him if you saw him. He's been in a million different things, as big as like Alien, and stuff like that.
He's a good actor.
So, yeah, he's a very good actor. And the scene's really powerful, and you don't, spoiler warning, you don't really know why until later.
Yeah.
And, because they're talking about basically Sonny keeps being told by his mom and stuff that nobody gets out of the life, right? You can try and go straight, but you'll be back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they keep using the word square. You can try and be a square or whatever. And, Henry takes a different perspective. He really does want Sonny to be happy. He wants him to take the shot. And he kind of chokes up and says, I'm paraphrasing, that, that somebody in the life could make it.
And it's implied that it's his life that he is disappointed in, and he doesn't want Sonny to have that. He wants him to be able to have a normal, more fulfilling life and not be dependent on crime and substances. At least that's what I took from it.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know that I'd call him a wholesome character per se. But
wholesome and relative to the rest of the movie. I mean,
fair enough. Yeah, I do agree. He totally cares very deeply about Jewel and Sonny. He really does.
So then Sonny decides to go to Texas and try and get this job. And we get these weird ass sped up driving scenes.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what Nick was going for with this, but it was almost cartoony.
It was the weirdest driving montage I can recall in a movie. Because everything was sped up. Things that shouldn't have been sped up were sped up, and it's not even like interesting stuff. There was a shot where like the car is coming, and then the camera just pans to the side of the road at one point.
Yeah, it's just
like nothing there.
It's just, to describe it, it's more just like a 2x speed or 2.5x speed of the car driving down highways and stuff. It's not like an artsy shot where you see the interior of the car and the person driving is a normal speed and like the outside is moving quickly or something like that. It's just everything is sped up.
They sped the tape up.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if maybe the movie's runtime was a little long, and that's where he was like, we can shave off a minute or 2 minutes in the scene if we just do a 2.5, car speed.
I mean, maybe it's an hour and 50, so it's not like they were trying to stay under the 2 hour mark.
No, but this is also in 2002, so movies were shorter then.
That's true.
So
it was weird. It was very jarring. I actually was like, I laughed, which I'm sure is not what they were going for. And so, and when that happens, I feel a little guilty at my response, right? Like but it was very weird.
I would if we ever got the opportunity to interview Nick, I would want to ask him about that. What was the motivation behind the sped up car? Was there something, artistic there? Did you just think it looked cool, or?
I mean, maybe it had something to do with, maybe it was supposed to show the kind of feelings of Sonny, because Sonny kind of like runs off. He's heated, right? His mom's really like gotten on his last nerve, kind of thing, and Carol's gone for like a week up in like some hotel somewhere working, and he just like takes off. And maybe it was supposed to be that kind of bat out of hell style approach, and they didn't have the budget to maybe do it the way they meant to.
Yeah, I feel like, with all the care that he took in choosing costumes and in my opinion, specifically the car, like he was very, that from his Gone to 60 Seconds time and things like that, he is a car enthusiast. He may not know much about cars, having read some interviews, but he does appreciate the aesthetics of cars, and he has specific ideas in mind. And in this movie, he very specifically picks a car that is like a cool guy,
well, it's the iconic. It's the black with the gold Firebird on the hood and the gold trim. Like, it's a very iconic version of that car.
Absolutely, one of the most sought after versions of that car in general. Yeah. He definitely wanted this guy to feel like a 50s. I've got the vibe he wanted to be like a 50s greaser. And actually, I felt like there's a lot of this in the movie, and maybe you'll agree with me that I feel like he wanted to set this movie in the 50s. Because like a lot of the outfits are like they're not 1981. There was a couple scenes specifically when I was watching it with my girlfriend where I was like, this is not what the world looked like in 1981. I wasn't alive in 81, but I know what aesthetics were in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wouldn't have been full 80s at this point. They wouldn't have had, what we know of from the 80s, but it would have had a lot of 70s fashion still carrying over in 1981. But we don't see any of that.
Right.
All of the fashion is like 60s and 50s. So I don't know if he just wanted to show like how far behind the times this particular area was, or if he actually wanted to like set the movie in a different, time period and just didn't.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, maybe that was the plan, and it was going to be too expensive because they would have had to get like vehicles from that time period and set up the whole street that way, and that would be more difficult.
But I could easily see this exact same story. There was nothing in this movie that said it needed to take place in 1981. You know what I mean? Everything was like the same story could have unfolded in 1957.
Yeah, I mean, nothing happens that's relevant.
So yeah, and nothing even feels like the 80s. When you watch like Stranger Things or some of these other movies that have taken place in the 80s in modern time,
right?
The 80s or the era plays a lot for like it's a role in itself. Whereas in this movie, the time period, it could have been any time period. The fact that it took place in 81 seems like they threw a dart at a dartboard.
Well, maybe that's the point. Then maybe it was meant to feel timeless.
Or it was meant to feel like it was, like I said, maybe it was meant to feel like this was a town that was kind of out of time. And,
maybe, I mean, they're in New Orleans, so it's not like they picked a small town or something.
Sure, but I mean, it takes place in a very small section of the town. There's not a lot of set pieces in this.
No, that's true. That's true.
And everybody kind of knows each other, and they've been working together for a long time. So I don't know, maybe it could be anything. It was an interesting decision, and one that I was questioning throughout the movie. Why aren't they leaning into the 80s a little bit more? I don't know that it necessarily would have added anything to the movie, but seeing, some people wearing jean jackets instead of like 50s leather jackets probably would have been okay. Anyway, so yeah, he goes to Texas. We get that weird sped up driving thing. And he goes and talks to his friend, who, funny enough, is a guy from Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah. Scott Conn. Yeah,
he was one of the car thieves from Gone in 60 Seconds. And he finds out that the bank took the bookstore from his dad while he was deployed, and his dad passed away of cancer while he was deployed, and so he came back to no family, no house, no business. No, nothing. And really, he's taking it pretty well. He's he seems to be handling it fine. Sonny seems more upset by it than he does.
And I think this is where we start to see some cracks in the Sonny character, that maybe this dude's got issues and he's just trying to pretend that he doesn't.
Right. And so he gets him a beer and he explains the situation to him. And he says, I've got this date with this hot chick tonight, and she's got a friend. Why don't you come on out with us, and we'll have a good time while you're here in Texas. And he seems kind of anxious about the fact, because he was a male prostitute and hadn't really ever been on a date before. His whole thing was just pleasuring women. But he does it. And she inevitably asks what he does for a living. And he just is kind of ambiguous about it, saying like, I just got back from the military and I'm still figuring things out. But eventually she ends up kind of making a move on him, and they sleep together. And he looks like he is absolutely in love with her at this point. And he's like revealing everything about, he's bearing his soul. I guess he has that like post-nut clarity where he just like, has his mind is finally cleared, and he feels like he could say anything, which is a phenomenon that happens to some guys, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, he tells her, she says, oh my god, you're so good at that, you should get paid for that.
You should do that for a living.
Yeah, just randomly spouting that out after a one night stand in 1981. And he is like, I do that for a living. And she's like, what? And there's like this whole scene,
because she doesn't believe him at first, and she thinks he's kidding, right?
And he starts to feel judged, it kind of seems like. And so he goes into the bathroom. She goes into the bathroom, and he follows her into the bathroom and sees her like drinking something, and he starts flipping out. He thinks it's a drug. I can't remember what drug.
He said it was codeine.
Codeine.
Right, because he would know because he's seen what he's seen or whatever, right? It's an unlabeled bottle. I'm not saying that he was wrong necessarily. His reaction, on the other hand, is fucked up.
Yeah. She says it's cough syrup, and she her sister later confirms that her sister's friend or boyfriend or whatever,
his buddy, his buddy
yeah, confirms that she's like addicted to cough syrup, and he sees her drinking this, he knocks it out of her hand and smashes the bottle, and then like starts rifling through all the drawers and like shelving and finds like 10 more bottles and breaks them all.
Like these are all glass bottles, right? Because it's the early 80s, so there's glass everywhere. She's like mostly naked,
and he's screaming kind of at her around. She's screaming.
He has gone off the deep end, like completely.
He's had a mental break at this point. And I think he keeps talking about how like she's judging him for being unclean or something, and she's dirty and all this other stuff. So yeah, there's like this whole scene, and he's like naked yelling at his friend. They're all sleeping together in the same house, and so his friend hears the yelling, and then the girl's sister hears the yelling, and so there's a scene. He's yelling at his friend, everybody's yelling at everybody. They tell him to leave, and so he walks out the door.
He starts screaming about how he's better than them, and like all this, like just a complete breakdown.
Okay, so my theory here is that Nic Cage was trying to he wanted a scene that he would have liked to have in a movie, because I could really see him doing a scene like this, kind of way over the top, emotional, maybe. Large. And Franco, I didn't think carried the same kind of energy that Nick would have. I didn't really take it super seriously. Like I didn't buy into the whole thing. It felt,
I guess I'm having a hard time picturing Nick doing a scene this like domestically violent.
He's done a lot of domestic violence in his movies.
Not like this.
Okay. You've watched 30 some movies with me.
I can't recall a scene.
Seen him literally punch women in the face.
I can't recall a scene like this.
Okay.
But either way, Franco is just like screaming right at the top of his lungs, and so his voice is like breaking at times, and he's basically naked in the scene, and he's just like repeating himself over and over again. I don't know. It was I think the scene did what it was supposed to do, which is make you extremely uncomfortable and then shatter any possible
hope that you had for Sonny as a character.
Because up until this point, you're rooting for him, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking
you want him to get out,
and then this happens, and it's like, well, he's actually like he is this like horrible dude, whether or not it's because of his upbringing, whatever, but he's not a good guy.
Yeah, and this is basically when the switch flips.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides that he's not going to go straight anymore. Now he's going to go full into this lifestyle. This is where my note kicked in about the 50s stuff, is because a lot of the music in the movie was also 50s music, and it wasn't 50s and 60s. And, there was like no 80s music at all.
There was something early on, might have been 70s, but honestly, the music in this movie was pretty good.
It was great. Yeah, I'm not complaining, certainly. It just again, when you're talking about the 80s, and granted this was 81, so I would have maybe expected more 70s music, but it was a little disappointing that we didn't get any of the big
there was sounds. There was a Rush track that made it in there at one point. Chicago was in there, which was 70s. So like
there's a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit, but not. It was a good soundtrack. Oh, Bowie, right. Bowie was in there.
Yeah, Bowie was in there. I was pleasantly surprised at that. I think I have a note about it. I think David Bowie soundtrack. I have a note later than that. And I know you're a soundtrack guy, so I knew you'd appreciate that. But
I mean, it was for me, it was the best part of the movie. So
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, so after all that happens, my next note was Nick really likes framing character moments. So you and I had definitely a similar thought on that.
mm-hmm.
So then he goes to I should mention, because we didn't talk about this much earlier in the movie, he to pay him or pay her back for getting the Trans Am, she requests that he have sex with her, the Mena Suvari's character Carol.
Right.
And so they have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this point, it's kind of become obvious up to this point in the movie that she for some reason is obsessed with him after this.
Yeah.
I like you said, she does maybe see him as a way out, but also she just seems like she is completely in love with him. Her character is not that deep, in my opinion. Her character has two things that she wants: Sonny and to get out of this life. And there's not really much depth beyond that.
I mean, it could be, and this is kind of a trope or a cliche that's used in film and TV too, is that, he's kind of the first guy who just treats her like kind of decent.
Right.
Right. Because she's never been treated well. Right. That's how she ended up with Jewel in the first place. And Jewel treats her like shit too. So Sonny is just like not being a monster to her. And that is like enough.
Right. So when he gets back, there's a big scene with his mom, where she's like, it seems like he's about to get back into the sex work stuff, and she is talking to him about how important it is that he continues and everything like that, and how she worked with him for years and he can't just give that up, and she's happy he's coming back, and she'll make some calls for him. And then there's like this weird cut. I don't know if it was weird for you, but it was weird for us, where he's like having sex with an older lady, and you'd think, like, my first instinct was he's fucking his mom right now, because it just, like, he was talking to his mom just a second ago about not intimate in a sexual way, but like intimate in a like character way.
Gotcha.
Things, and then it's a smash cut to him like making love to somebody, with like the same color hair and similar hairstyle as the mom.
Gotcha.
It wasn't the mom, it was the woman from the suit store.
Mm-hmm.
The one that had been with him before.
Yeah.
And so they finish, and she's like completely smitten with him. She's supposed to be picking her husband up at the airport, but instead she's just like talking to him and distracted by him wanting to talk about scheduling another session or whatever. And she says she only has $150 in cash and asks if she can write a check,
because it's supposed to be 200.
Yeah, which is really funny to me. In 1981, writing a check for sex work, like.
Well, his response, like, it was just very much like, I can't take a check.
Right. and then she's like, I can't write a check either. I don't even know why I suggested that. So he takes the 150 and says, you know what? Just like, if you have any friends that need to, get it on, hit me up. And she's like, oh, I'm going to recommend you to so many people. So it, whatever. So yeah, he gets another job. He gets sent to another madam that I guess his mom works with occasionally. Also, I had a note in here that Sonny's mom, I felt like that actress was really overacting the whole movie. Like, it's the only way I can kind of explain it is like, in when you go see a musical in person and the actors are like very large in their movements and things like that, because they have to, for it to translate on a stage versus in a movie screen. That's what it felt like she was doing. Like, everything she was doing had to be so over the top, like it was a play versus a movie. But because it was a movie, it kind of came across like she was overacting. Anyway, not really relevant to the scene that we're up, but it was something I felt like throughout this movie.
I mean, she is a stage actor too, so that might have been part of that coming in there. I don't really know her particularly well, so I can't speak to like how she would be in other roles.
Right, if this was a choice or if it's just how she acts.
Yeah, her name is Brenda Blethyn. If you've seen Pride and Prejudice, she is Mrs. Bennet in Pride and Prejudice. It's probably where most people would recognize her, but yeah, she's in a bunch of stuff.
he goes to this other madam, and this madam is like, yeah, I've got a job for you. You'll need a costume. And so he shows up to this lady's house in a cop outfit. And it's a weird scene. He's like, yeah, there's an intruder, or there's a person like assaulting women in the area, and is your husband home? I just need to make sure that you're safe. Let's check out the bedroom.
Before they get to the bedroom, she's acting in such a way where I had a thought that
he was at the wrong house.
He was in the wrong house.
We had that same thought. Yeah. She seems like she has no knowledge of what's happening or anything. And then when he says to go check out the bedroom, she seems like, okay.
Yeah,
so
especially because she closes the door to the bedroom, like, all right, so we're fine. But she looks bewildered when he first shows up.
Yeah,
you know.
And so when he gets up to the bedroom, he goes to the window and like he's checking the window, but then he just like starts rubbing himself. To like get himself worked up, I guess.
Yeah, I think he was starting to like, because he doesn't like. Okay, he's conflicted, right? He doesn't really want to be doing this, but he feels like he has no choice because everything's fallen through for him, and so he's trying to get himself through that situation. Which, by the way, leads me to like one of the bigger plot problems in this movie, which is the only thing he could see available to him was this bookstore job. But again, like they harp on, he was honorably discharged. Why didn't he just go back to the army?
He talks about it at one point, but then he doesn't do it.
But then is he, like if that's like why?
Oh no, it wasn't him that talked about it. It was his friend. That's what it was. His friend said he was going to go back to the military because he had nothing,
Right. Well, so go back to the military then.
So his friend already showed it to him.
Successful career in the military, right? And you would be housed and fed, and you could move up the ranks, and maybe meet somebody, right, and have a pretty normal life. And it's just completely ignored, other than that like one line from his buddy.
Right, which is showing that it's obviously an option for both of them.
But like, it's just that I couldn't get that out of my head.
Yeah.
I guess it just drove me nuts.
I didn't have as big of a problem with it, but yeah, I mean, it is a plot hole for sure. So yeah, there we get like this extended scene of him like rubbing his crotch to try and get himself aroused. And then the woman comes over and starts blowing his nightstick.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, it's on. And he starts getting kind of rough with her and like, put your hands in the air and like throwing her on the bed and stuff. And he starts like getting on top of her. She says, leave the uniform on. And so he just like unzips the pants and starts going at it. And then she's like, no, use the nightstick. So not only she has a nightstick fetish of some kind because she wants to suck on it and then she wants to be penetrated by it. And you know what? More power to her. I'm glad she knows what she wants in life and she has the means to get it. But at the end of this, she tries to short him like the other woman did, essentially, where she's like, I only have this much money. Or no, she doesn't say she only has this much money. She hands him like $150. And he says, well, it's supposed to be 200. And she says, oh, I know. And gives no explanation otherwise. And so he starts breaking her shit. He like grabs this TV and like, he's like, oh, this will fetch some money. And then smashes it on the ground. It's like, oh, well, it's broken. I guess it won't. And he just like starts smashing heirlooms.
He like tears like the curtains off the wall. Like it goes like, look, I get the whole short change thing. And for a moment when he just drops the TV, there's a moment where I'm like, yeah, like, I guess I could understand that response, but then he just continues on well beyond anything sane at all. It just goes absolutely nuts. And then the scene to me totally falls apart because she eventually gives him the money, but she crumples up like a 50 or whatever it is and tosses it at him, and it just kind of like floats in the air as it goes down. And to me, broke like all of this in like tension that he built up being an insane maniac in this scene. It just took the wind out.
It was a little weird,
yeah.
Okay, where are we at? Okay, yeah, breaking old lady's shit to get paid. That was my note. So then my next note is car freakout.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, he's unhinged. So he gets back in his car, which, by the way, he doesn't own. That was a gift, essentially, from Carol, right? And goes ballistic in this car. If there was a trivia thing somewhere that said that something got broken or damaged, easy to believe. He goes insane. I don't know how he didn't break something or hurt himself.
Yeah.
Unhinged.
Yeah, he's definitely got some issues, mental health issues, anger issues. You know, in 1981, the therapy was pretty stigmatized. I mean, it still is, but you know, he definitely could have used some at this point. I don't know if it's like PTSD from the army or if it's he was like this beforehand. But
I mean, that they ignore, like, we never learn at all what he did in the army. We don't even know like what his roles were,
or
you
if he
know.
went to any kind of battle or
Right?
combat
Was
or
he
anything.
deployed? I mean, like, he was gone for a long enough period of time where he was probably deployed.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have no idea. It's not discussed.
Right. So my next note is so him and Carol are a couple now.
Well, no. So his mom, Jewel, is obsessed with Sonny and Carol working together as a team. And apparently that is a common thing where a couple will hire another couple and essentially swap, like be swingers, but but it's paid. And so that's what's happening. They're going out on a quote date because they've been hired by another wealthy couple.
Right. And then my next note is birthday date argument, which I think was between Henry and Jewel.
Yes.
Because she wants to go to this like fancy restaurant, and he doesn't really want to take her there. He doesn't have the money for it.
We just missed a scene. Yeah. I think it was the first of his card gambling scenes where he lost $40 playing cards with this guy.
Right. And when he says he doesn't have any money, she's like, go steal some shit. You know,
and he's like, it's gonna rain.
Yeah, it's gonna rain. She's like, I don't give a shit about the rain.
I didn't know that, that stealing was weather based.
Well, yeah, because you leave wet footprints in a house if you
that's smart. That's good thinking.
Yeah. So some of this is a little ambiguous. I don't remember the order in which things happened. I mean, I have the order of my notes, but I might have skipped some stuff. But yeah, at this point, we find out that he was prostituting at 12 years old. Because we knew that he was doing it at some point, but I guess in my mind, I was hoping that it was like 18 or like maybe 17, like, kind of adult.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, again, like, time is weird in this movie. So he's 26 when he comes back from the army. He probably wasn't in the army for 8 years.
Right.
That just seems unlikely. So to me, I was like, it was possible that he was 18, 19 doing this stuff, but not for very long. And then, yeah, you find out that he had been doing it since he was 12, which, I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So they end up going on this double, working together, this double thing, the swinger couple. And it's like this big party.
Very wealthy people.
Yes. And so she goes with the guy and he goes with the woman, which I think was the other woman from the suit store.
I believe so.
And the guy just keeps going like, golly gee, oh gee whiz, like while they're having sex.
It's awful. It's
so she's like riding him and he's just like, oh gee whiz, ma'am, oh gee, golly geez. And it's like, oh boy. And then she makes fun of it later, so I guess that's fine. And I have barefoot eating as a note. I don't remember exactly what was happening. I have a feeling it happened during this party. I don't know.
Barefoot eating? I mean, so we find the way the party kind of ends is the woman finds Sonny in her kitchen. He's made himself a sandwich.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
He eats one bite of it and then just like sets it down. But he eats it really aggressively. It's a big bite.
And he's like talking to her with the food in the mouth.
Yeah.
In his mouth.
There's like spittle of bread flying out of his mouth.
Dude, she
very
paid
sexy.
you for this, man. Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what the barefoot part is though.
I don't remember either. But they do they do it. They get their
kitchen.
job done in the kitchen, yeah. And after they're done, they go into where the husband and Carol are doing it and like watches them. They're like in the doorway while it's going on. And then the kids come in
like 30 seconds after it's
there's a guy literally just finished doing his thing and kids come running in.
Now,
very awkward.
To be fair, they're seemingly paid in full this time.
Yes, as far as you can tell.
The first and I think only time we see Sonny paid in full.
Yeah. And then so they leave together, get in the car, and she's like, I'm not tired. Are you tired? Let's go and do something. And she's like, let's
Awkward
just go
scene.
drive around. And so
Where?
where she's like, I don't know, just a farm road somewhere. And so they go to this like farm road, which is like a single lane road in this really nice car that is probably going to be fucked when they're done with it. I mean, I feel bad for when this guy gets it back because he's not going to be able to sell it. But yeah, they stop at this farmhouse and they like they're having very intimate conversation. She has a complete breakdown. You know, he has a lot of breakdowns in this movie, but she has a complete breakdown about wanting a baby and wanting a normal life and getting out of this life, and how she got proposed to by the guy that she blew for the Trans Am.
Was it that guy? Or
it was that guy, because he wants the Trans Am back later in the movie so that they can leave together to go get married.
Okay, I didn't really connect the dots. All right.
Well, gotcha. You see him in that scene too, but I mean, you haven't seen him much other than the blowjob scene at that point, so I can't.
I wasn't sure it was the same guy.
Yeah, but I can't blame you.
Her freak out is much more reasonable.
Yes, some more human freak out. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Like she's really sad because she thinks that she's not going to have the life that she wants. And that's a very relatable concept. Even if you don't want the exact same life she does, I think a lot of people can relate to the idea.
It is a very long scene though. Yeah. With her breaking down, it's raining outside and she like gets in the mud and like
she cuts her hand on a nail, and I thought that was going to go somewhere later, and it didn't.
It just gave her an excuse to like run out and him to chase after her to make sure she's okay. And he's in like this white suit that's been hyped up through the whole movie.
$600 suit.
Yeah, in 1981. I mean,
that's a lot of money for a suit today.
For sure. I wouldn't spend that on a suit. But yeah, it's a very long scene, and you know, it kind of goes back into that thing that we talked about Nic Cage loving character moments, because he put the emphasis in this movie is on those character moments. It's not on action or like, you know, sex scenes, although there's a lot of those. But
they're just secondary. Most of them are, you either show them up to them starting or you show them as they're ending. There's not like huge full-blown sex scenes.
Right. It's not like Zandali where we get like, crazy shit. But yeah, they he has a lot of these extended character moments, and her breakdown is one of them. And you can tell that's just his favorite thing in movies, is that character development and those intimate scenes. And, you know, we get one of those. And so after this whole scene, they go back and we get another shaving scene, which I think at this point is the third shaving scene of him shaving in this movie. Mm-hmm. And Carol tells him that this guy proposed, and that if he's not going to go with her, then she's going to go marry the Trans Am guy. And that she's leaving because he's not gonna take her seriously and not gonna get out of this life.
I was so worried about what his reaction was going to be for her.
Yeah, you thought it was going to be like another breakdown.
Well, I mean, it's the only time he doesn't.
Right. So then we get a scene of Henry where he's playing gin and he wins. And so at this point, my next note was, he won gin. Something's going to happen to him.
Yeah. Look, I don't mean to be too insulting here, but this was like the single most cliche thing I've seen in a long time.
Right. So as soon as he wins, he like walks outside, gets into his car, and I was writing a note at this point. I think I was finishing that note about something's going to happen to him, and there's an explosion. I assume a truck ran into his car or something.
He pulls the car away, he's driving down the street, and then this truck just comes, and like the thing bursts into flames.
Yeah, like instantly.
The Michael Bay movie,
right? Yeah, and he's dead, and you see like his hat fly out of the car and like land on the ground. So it's definitely implied that he's dead, although we never see a body. So maybe he'll come back in the sequel.
No, I guess that's true. We can get his charred wallet later.
That's true. So yeah, he dies immediately after winning gin, and so then we get the big reveal, which is that Henry was Sonny's dad, who he's hyped up a couple times as being this guy that was like a one-time hookup with his mom, you know, years ago, and then the guy left, and you know, nothing has been known about him since. But then it's revealed that he's Sonny's dad, which, you know, at this point you've probably figured that out already. It wasn't a well hidden fact at this point in the movie.
I mean, it was a reasonable guess, but then like when you pair it with the way he died, it's just this massive cliche that just has another massive cliche just tacked onto it, and it's just
Yeah, yeah, and then we get the David Bowie song. I think it was uh Space Oddity, wasn't it?
I had it up here and I just lost it.
I believe it was Space Oddity.
So it was Moon Age Daydream.
Was it? Okay. And then we also get, I'll say this, I mentioned we didn't get much 80s music, but did get Diva Whip It
right. Yes.
After this. So yeah,
yes.
we did get a couple of 80s, but at this point in the movie, he's like depressed and she's leaving, and it's like he's having all these things happen to him. And so he's drunk. He goes out drinking, and he goes to this other brothel that we hadn't seen up to this point, which is where Nic Cage's character, Acid Yellow,
I kept just waiting for him to show up like half this movie. You know,
I knew it had to be at this point because I had seen on IMDb the trailer played or something while I was describing it, and in the scene that it showed Nic Cage's picture, it had like weird fuzziness on the side, and that's the way they kind of portrayed his drunkenness. So I was like, okay, it's got to be coming up. And so yeah, he goes to this brothel where Nic Cage is essentially the madam. I don't know if it's called the sir, if it's a man, but he's the person that runs a brothel, and it seems to be a gay brothel. And he is a very eccentric character, wears yellow over the top.
He's got a prosthetic nose. Yeah.
A weird accent, so I actually almost had a bingo on this one. So you'll make sure you'll watch our bingo card for this one.
Bingo.
This was the closest I've come to getting a Cage bingo, and which is funny because he was in the movie for like 2 seconds.
I know, right?
But yeah,
but he stole the scene. I'll tell you that.
He did steal the scene. He killed it. But basically, Sonny goes into this brothel and says, "I've got a lot of energy. I need to get it out." And so Acid Yellow's like, "Well, when did you switch? You've never had an interest in this before. Yeah, you've never done guys before." And he's like, "Just give me a guy. Just give me a guy." And he's like, "Okay, I got a guy for you." So he brings this guy in, closes the door, and then Sonny just starts beating the shit out of this guy. He's like, this guy is clearly into like a humiliation fetish type of thing. And so he starts out with that, but then he's like, why did you tell me you're my dad or something like that? Something about dad thing.
What?
The guy's like, what are you talking about? And then he just punches him across the face and just starts beating the shit out of him. The guy's like crying out, and Sonny and the bouncer, or not Sonny and the bouncer, Acid Yellow and the bouncer hear it, and they come in, and Acid Yellow pulls a sword out of his cane and like starts swinging it at him. Oh my god, it was so great.
Awesome. It was great.
And so yeah, he runs out into the street, and we don't hear anything from Acid Yellow anymore, but he does go, "I have cocaine," at one point. Nic Cage does, which was great. And he also, when he pulls out the sword, Kane goes, "Cut his face," and like starts swinging in his face. It's so good.
I want to see the prequel, the Acid Yellow story.
The Acid Yellow prequel. We should pitch that to him whenever we get to interview him in the future.
Is that, I would watch that. I would watch the hell out of
that. So then the next scene we see him like in his house. Carol's leaving.
He's holding like a bag that's got his now dead dad's, I guess, belongings in it.
Yeah, in the hat. Yeah. And so she's talking to him about how he can still, or like she says, "Come outside with me because I don't want to talk about you with this where she can hear," being his mom. And she doesn't want his mom to hear. And so she takes him outside, and she's like, "Listen, you don't have to ever go back in there. You can walk out on your own and leave this life. That's what I'm doing. And you can be better than that." And so you kind of see him thinking about this, and she goes away and gets in the car and is driving away and crying, and the guy is a huge prick to her. He's like, "Wipe away them tears," like just a huge jerk. And then we see like Sonny running after her, like running after the car, and she gets out of the car, and it has like this happy ending montage essentially with those two leaving together. And then it cuts back to him just standing outside the door, and the movie ends. So you think you're getting a happy ending, but no, it's a completely ambiguous ending. You don't know what happens.
And that's the movie.
That's the movie. That's
It's
the
just
end.
a sad, depressing movie filled with mostly sad, depressed people. I guess Carol at least gets away. I don't know how long she stays with this guy. But yeah, it's a downer of a movie that has a lot of very intense, problematic themes and events, and that's the movie, man. That's the whole movie.
It is, yeah. I mean, we can't harp on it too much.
No.
It isn't much deeper than we've laid it out to be. I mean,
So that's it. So then,
his one. Okay, so just I want your opinion.
uh-huh.
Do you think he should have directed more movies after this, or do you think that maybe this kind of showed that he wasn't really cut out to be a director and should stick to being an actor?
No, I think I would have liked to have seen more opportunities for him to do it, because I don't really have any issues with the way it's shot, with the way things are portrayed. I don't care for the story. I don't
I guess
care.
my wonder is how much he had to do with the actual story, because it does say a film by Nic
Yeah, but I
Cage.
mean, he didn't write it. He's not credited with writing it.
He did choose this project though, so I
He
mean that
did.
has to be accounted for as well. It's not like he was forced into doing this. This is the project he picked to direct. He probably could have directed a lot of movies.
I mean, that's possible. I don't know. That's the thing, right? Because he never directed anything else. I don't know if there were offers for him to direct things.
Maybe not, but I mean, if people knew he was interested in that, I mean, because he had just come off his Holy Trinity of movies. And I think Gone in 60 Seconds was around this time, a few years before. He had the Holy Trinity in the late 90s. He was pretty popular around this time. He was a pretty big star. So I
Yeah.
feel like, if studios knew he was looking for a movie to direct, he wouldn't have had to necessarily do this indie movie. So he picked this movie.
All things considered, I would have given him another opportunity, right? I'm not big on like the one and done mentality, especially like at this level, right? Like this guy has been, a proven actor for decades at this point, and one not amazing outing doesn't mean he's a bad director. There are plenty of bad directors that get to do a dozen different films,
No, and there was
but
potential in the way it was directed in this for sure.
right.
I could see what he was going for with a lot of it. And I think with the right movie, that it would have been, he could have had something really, really good. I just don't think that this was the movie. There was no chance that this movie was going to be an Oscar contender. There was no movie that this movie was going to be popular at the box office just based on the subject matter.
Well,
I
the thing is,
mean,
based on how much money it made, it only made 132 grand worldwide. To me, that means it wasn't even like
and this was in 2002. I mean, how much
right.
did Spider-Man make that year? Probably
Yeah.
300 million or something, or 350 million.
So to me, it means this movie wasn't even given a normal release.
Right.
Right. And so, I just don't know enough about the behind the scenes aspects to say whether it's a fair shake or not for him. I can say that I don't really care for James Franco in this. I don't care for him in most things. And I didn't before he became problematic. And it certainly has, tainted my view of him since then. And the rest of the cast, I mean, yeah, Harry Dean Stanton's great, but like the rest of the cast is,
Mena Suvari is good. I mean,
yeah,
she's
she's
done
good.
a
She's
lot of
good.
good stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. The movie
But
doesn't
her
really,
role was wasted for in this
right.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see the bones of a good director there. I mean, he knows how his way around a film set. He
Mm-hmm.
has a very clear vision of what he wants. I just don't necessarily think that this was the right choice, and I think this was a good practice run. I would have like you said, I would have liked to see him get a second chance, because you learn a lot your first time doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He's done
it,
so many of these like mob type flicks that I think I would have rather have seen him direct something like that's a little bit more of a mainstream concept, because like the themes in this movie are very niche edge themes that your average viewer is not going to
and
connect with.
dark.
And
Like
they're
nobody's going to
dark.
go to this movie and see it 3 times in theaters.
No, but like I also just don't think a lot of people can connect with it. It's very
Right.
hard to relate to a lot of these situations. And I'm not saying that means it shouldn't be made, right? But it does mean that it doesn't have the same ceiling that, a movie about him being an ex-assassin is going to have.
Right.
Right. And so I think that hindered it as well.
Agreed. Well, we have to rate it.
Yeah, yeah. So we rate our movies 0 through 20, 0 low, 20 high on overall quality and overall caginess. I guess I'll kick things off this
Yeah,
time.
because you don't want to rate the caginess. I know. You want me to take that first hit.
No,
I saw that coming a mile away.
You go ahead. Go ahead. You can go first.
No, it's okay.
You went first last time. I was trying to be fair. All right.
Yeah, go ahead. You started off, and I'll do caginess.
Okay. So overall quality, I mean, it's not great. It's certainly not the worst movie that we have watched.
No.
Or anything like that. I would probably give this a 5.
Yeah, I'd be right in there with you, 5 or 6, somewhere in there. It was definitely not a movie I would watch again. But I would be curious to talk to him about it, why he picked it. There's some stuff in there that I'd be curious to know his process behind.
So are you giving it a 5 or a 6?
I'll say a 5. Yeah, a 5. I don't think 6 is. I think a 6 is a little high for it.
Okay, so we got a 5 on overall quality. So puts it above last week's Left Behind by half a point.
Yeah, I would rather watch this again than Left Behind. So,
yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit of a coin flip depending on my mood, but
that's fair.
But caginess is interesting here because he's only really in one scene.
But he is 100% cagey in that one scene.
He's 100% cagey in that one scene, and because he's the director, argument could be made that he is in every scene, and there are some aspects of some of the freakouts that may be considered cagey at times. Yeah. What are you thinking?
I mean, I was going to put it pretty high because every scene that we physically see him in, he's pretty much at full cage. I'm not going to put it at 20, but I mean, it's going to be mid-teens, I'm thinking. I don't know. Where are you at? I kind of feel like we need to collaborate on this a little bit because it's kind of a weird movie.
It is a weird movie. I was thinking because he's only in the one scene, but there are some other aspects to the movie that are Cage-esque. I was going to put it somewhere around, I'm thinking a 13.
See, I was thinking like a 15.
Okay.
But, we can meet in the middle at 14.
Yeah. 15 and 13.
His one scene that he was in was just serious. It was full cage. So I know he was only in one scene, but he, when we're rating caginess, I feel like,
Well, so 15 first, just some comparison's sake. You gave 15s to Leaving Las Vegas. That's your only 15. But
he was cagey in a lot of scenes in that one.
You gave Spirit of Vengeance a 14, Prisoners of the Ghostland a 16. So just for some perspective there. But
I think that's fair.
Yeah. All right.
It would have been like a 20 if he was this character in the whole movie, because he was only in the one scene, I brought it down a little bit because of that.
So we got a 5 on quality and a 14 on overall caginess. And then what we got to do next is find out which movie is going to join the Wheel O' Cage and replace Sonny. And that is Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans.
Which I think he's actually come out. I think he's actually come out and said that's one of his favorite projects he's ever done. You remember that late night interview he did when he was promoting Weight of Unbearable Talent?
Yes.
And he came out and said his 5 favorite projects, Nic Cage projects.
That was one of them?
I'm pretty sure that was one of them.
Is that I guess I didn't realize that was always the full name of the movie. I was looking at it and thought maybe it was a sequel to Bad Lieutenant. I didn't realize it had such a long title.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, Bad Lieutenant joins the Wheel of Cage. So to find out what movie we're going to talk about next time, go to comingofcage.com and find our Wheel O' Cage spin, which comes out the Monday after our episode. And then we'll find out which Nicolas Cage movie is up next on the show. Ryan, anything else for Sonny?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. It was something.
It was something. Yeah, Nick, go ahead. If you're listening, we're sorry, but we want to see you direct something else. Let's give it another shot.
Yeah, reach out to us. I want to pick your brain a little bit about this.
Yeah, we got lots of questions. We love you.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm Derek. That's Ryan. We're the Coming of Cage podcast, comingofcage.com, your podcast app of choice, our YouTube channel, what have you. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.